Hey, before we start the episode, this is just a reminder this episode does take place before we had changed to a strictly interview format, and as such, there may be references to the other episodes we used to do that don't have anything to do with that. You can disregard that and just enjoy the episode.
The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien help me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey, it's the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette. I am your host, and that was our theme song, Superpowers by Ookla the Mock. Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of my feature interview with comic illustrator, artist, sometimes writer, pitchman, Mike Rooth. I had a lot of fun in part 1. Part 2 is just as much fun, if not more, because we cover a lot of his recent work in comic covers and interiors, some of the things he's been working on up till now, and a little bit about where he's going to be going in the future. I hope you enjoyed part 1. It was a ton of fun. Part 2, just as much more. So I am going, as I mentioned, I am currently on vacation when you were hearing this, so I'm recording this well in advance, so I don't really know if anything's happened in the comic world between now and then. I mean, if Spider-Man got sold to DC, if Batman's now a Lebanese man named Steve, I don't know about it. I don't know. I can't comment. However, if Batman is now a Lebanese man named Steve, I look forward to reading his tale and seeing what the stories of Lebanese Steve Batman would take us. So if that's what's happening out there in the DC world, the comic world, I will learn about it when I get back from vacation. I will have access to checking on social media and that sort of things. However, since I'm recording this so far in advance, I can't really comment on what happens in the comic world. I could guess, I could estimate, I could postulate on that. I could say a lot of things, and that might be fun. You know, a what if scenario. Maybe one of them would come true, but unfortunately, I don't know. Who knows? The fate is uncertain. I am in Schrodinger's box right now. You don't know if I'm alive or dead. I could be both. Who knows? Who knows? Hopefully I'm alive wherever I am at the time of you listen to this. And I will be back from vacation soon to get ready and geared up for more episodes of the Graphic Histories Podcast. But for right now, you're getting part 2 of my interview with comic illustrator, artist, cover artist, Mike Rooth.
The crazy thing was I wanted to go to Sheridan College. That was the whole dream. Everyone wanted to go to Sheridan College. And so I intended to go, and I applied and I got in. And it was a hard program to get into, but I got in. But the problem was I didn't have any money. And my parents didn't make enough to send me to school. And I couldn't get a student loan because while I was still living at my parents' house, there was some kind of stupid Ontario law which prevented me from being able to get a student loan. So I applied the following year. I stuck around high school for another year. I took like 9 more credits, just leveled up my skills, took a few art classes, took a few night school classes, just filled the time because I knew I was eventually going to Sheridan. And then I applied the second year and I got in again. And again, I couldn't get a student loan because on paper, my parents made too much money, which looking back is insane because it was a single income household. And my dad had 3 boys, and I'm sure he wasn't even making $40,000 a year back then. So I don't even know how they figured that. But anyway, I asked them, I said, so how am I going to go to college now if I can't get a loan and I can't, how? And so they're like, well, if you lived on your own, if you moved out of your parents' house and you could show us that you could be a responsible adult and pay your own hydro bill and all that kind of shit, then you might qualify for a loan then. So I moved out of my parents' house at 18 to try to figure out what the fuck I was doing. And so I ended up just moving out and getting a place and getting a job and getting a hydro bill and all that stuff. And then I was about 8 or 9 months into that life, and I got the call that I was finally accepted and approved for a loan. So
Wonderful.
So I was able to go to Sheridan. So I went to Sheridan College for the illustration program from 1996 to 1999. I met amazing people there. I learned an awful lot, but it also beat the comic books out of me. I went in there with this pretty solid vision of wanting to be a comic artist, or I wanted to do covers for like D&D books or like fantasy art. You know, I wanted to draw stuff for Wizards of the Coast or whoever, Heavy Metal Magazine. I was just so excited about it. And they beat that out of me at school. They basically told me that I didn't have those kind of chops and that I should focus on this, doing this or that. And I should have pushed back. And comics at that time, it was like the mid to late 90s. So comics were kind of in this weird like death rattle. It was before Marvel had sold Spider-Man to Sony, and before we got all those films and the X-Men.
Yeah, Marvel was really struggling around that time.
Yeah, they're on their bellies, and comics were kind of on their bellies. And the benefit of going to school when I went to school was all of our instructors were also working illustrators. So they actually knew the business and actually knew what was happening in terms of what was popular and where people were getting work. And their idea was that I'm not going to get any work as a comic book artist unless I live in New York City, and I'm not going to get any work as a fantasy artist unless I live in California. And I always thought that was ridiculous because, again, the internet was brand new. No one was using it the way they're using it now back then. And so it was, they were telling us to buy fax machines and stuff like this when we were, and I was like, nah, something else is around the corner here. And anyway, so I graduated after the 3-year program with a portfolio that looked like 5 other people had done the portfolio. Like, I didn't know what my style was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I basically just kind of, I knew I could draw. I knew I was pretty good at figures and space, and I was pretty good at construction drawing, and I just figured, whatever, this is what I'm doing now. So I graduated school, and then immediately got a job doing labor because I was too chicken shit. I was too chicken shit to actually be a freelancer. And so I got a job for a company that put together bleachers for sporting events, and they just build these big bleacher stadiums. And I did that for about a summer. Did some silk screening on the side, and just was really feeling like, fuck, I'm 40 grand in debt. I just killed myself at school for 3 years, graduated with honors. I come out of the other side, and here I am with a shovel. Like what did I do? Like, what was I doing, So I actually had a moment. I had a comic book origin moment. I was at a job. We were putting together a bleacher. It was the wintertime. It was for a big curling show in Cambridge, Ontario. And we were all carrying these long 30-foot steel planks in, which was the bench seats of the bleachers. And I'm carrying these things in, and we have to walk down this really weird, narrow, snowy step that no one bothered to shovel. And we're all these big guys carrying these planks of steel down these long lengths, and we were, it was slippery and treacherous. When we get inside, and it's a smooth concrete floor where they're laying down the curling area, and they're doing all this stuff, and we're carrying these planks in. And I walk in, and the guy on the other end of the plank slips, and he falls. And I fell forward holding the plank. And as I fell, I could see it. I could see it in slow motion, my hands getting crushed like strawberry jam underneath that metal plank. And I got my hands out in time, and this plank hits the ground, and this gong sound, like boom. And I literally stood there in the resonance of that bong, and I stood there, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. It's just clear to me. And I just was like, this moment of calm came over, and the guy was okay, and I was okay, and my hands were still here. And I was like, holy shit, man. And I walked up to my foreman, and I gave him my hat. I said, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean? I said, he goes, it's 10 a.m. I said, sorry, buddy, I'm done. I'm done. And I called Erica. We were only dating a little while back then, because I met her at Sheridan College. And I said, I quit my job. She's like, you quit your job? What are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to be an illustrator, or I'm going to starve to death. One of the two. That's it. And it was just that simple. Wow. And from that point on, just never looked back. And wow. it took doing a job like that and getting paid like $6 an hour or something ridiculous like that to do hard work, and to make me realize that I've been working too hard to go down this road again. My whole family did labor. I don't have any. I used to dig trenches when I was a young man after high school. Like, again, killed myself in high school to get high marks. Yeah. Got a job with a shovel as soon as I was done digging holes. Yeah. Like, I couldn't understand why I would always go there. But anyway, never looked back. And then, one illustration job turned into 2, and then 2 clients turned into 6 clients, and then it just started to snowball from there. And, There were some real big years, some real good years. There were some real tough years.
So what was the first major illustration job there?
So the first one I did was for a book called A Spirit of Canada, and it was an illustrated book that just told old stories and folklore stories about Canadians and Indigenous people from all different parts of Canada. And my job was to create a little tiny chapter icon illustration that breaks up each chapter. And so it was my first gig, and it paid $1,500. I had to do 45 or 50 illustrations. So it didn't work out to very much.
No, it wouldn't be very much.
It was a $1,500 paycheck, though. And I was like, this is the best, because I've been making $6 an hour swinging the shovel so far.
Yeah.
So it felt like, so I sat down, I did the icons, I went through the whole process, and they all got approved, and they all got printed. And I even got to do a couple of interior illustrations because they liked my work. And that was my first gig. And they put my name on the back of the book. So all of a sudden, I saw my name in print. And it was like, that's the poison that I've been looking for my whole life.
Yeah, there's the addiction.
It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about that. It was about taking this book and being able to hand it to my mom and saying, look what I made. You know what I mean? And so that's what it was for me. And then after that, like that job, that guy talked to some people, and that turned into, you know, a lot of it came through the fact that when I was at Sheridan, we had to do in our final year, we had to do a work placement with another illustrator or with a design firm or something. And it was super hard to find one. And I lucked out and ended up finding a husband and wife couple, Rick Jacobson and his wife, Laura. And they were both from Alberta. And they were both just exceptional realism illustrators. They did stuff like, you know, and then the President's Choice will do like products like orange juice or something like that. And it'll be like a drawing of oranges and lush like leaves and dew on the leaves. Well, those aren't photographs; those are paintings. And he did them. So I learned to render in gouache from him, and I learned to just learn so much about the business and the kind of things you could do in the business. And so I stuck with him for a little while and learned quite a bit of stuff. And then I got a couple of his contacts through him. And it was just little tiny pieces of work. And still in the back of my mind, I wanted to make comics. I wanted to make, I wanted to do like fantasy art. I wanted to get into like Warhammer magazine or whatever. So I always kept that on the back burner. And then I started doing work for a company called Stephen Thomas, who's like a big hub company that does stuff for fundraising groups, like for charities like the Lung Association or the CNIB or UNICEF or places like that. So I found myself suddenly getting illustration jobs doing stuff for like fundraisers, like maybe it's just an illustrated map of what the facility looks like, or maybe it's an illustration of a little blind kid or something like that is a way to kind of appeal for money or whatever it was, whatever the purpose of the things were. And I did loads and loads of those. So I built up, and some of them went nationwide. Like I did one for Canadian Lung Association. It was just a kind of a Norman Rockwell style Santa Claus drawn that would appear on a cover of this little envelope. And it's an envelope that went into every Canadian household, I think, for 7 years running. So you might have even got it in your mailbox.
I think I did. That's amazing. That's amazing. Very cool.
It was a $600 job. And it got used for 7 years. They really made a lot of money off of that.
Yeah, I would say.
And you know what? I was so proud. Every time I saw it in the mail, I'm like, I did that. Yeah. And that was kind of a cool little thing. Because I was never going to be a pro wrestler. I was never going to be able to get that kind of glory. So, you know, I thought I would chase after the art. And I'm not sure. I ended up getting work doing a lot of children's books for a company called Rubicon here in Oakville. And they were amazing people to work for. They did like graphic novels and comics and books that were meant to help students who struggle with reading or new Canadians who are learning English. So it was a pleasure to work on something that was doing so much good, because what I learned during that experience is that here in this country, we have students who somehow make it all the way through and graduate high school and they're completely illiterate. They've managed to slip through the cracks. They don't know how to read or write, but they've managed to somehow wheedle their way through. And I don't know how, but this is a thing that's a problem in our country, and I had no idea. So a lot of the books that I was creating seemed like kids' books, but they were actually for older people learning to read. Wow. So I would take things like famous fairy tales or famous, something like Treasure Island, and take Treasure Island, where the English language has changed so much in 300 years since it was written, that I would take that book and I would have to reinterpret it into something that someone today could understand without using all that old archaic English. And so that's the kind of stuff I did. And then I did probably 40 or 50 graphic novels actually for that company, but it's not the kind of thing that would ever show up in a store. It'd be for scholastic books. They would be they'd be given to kids as textbooks at schools. So yeah, I don't even know if I was credited in those books. It doesn't even matter. I know I drew over 50 of them. I got them on my shelf for proof, but
that's fantastic.
and you can still find them on eBay. If you look on eBay and look up Mike Rooth, you can still see these old timeline books that I did.
Well, they must have credited you somehow for them if they're.
I think so. Yeah. So, and I was, it was a good job. I got to stay at home and draw. They paid me a flat rate every 2 weeks. It was pretty good. But I still wanted to do comics, like real comics. And in 2010, twist of fate came that basically the whole art division of the company that I was working for had to lay off their entire art team. I was the only illustrator on staff. So I was suddenly laid off after a 3-year contract. Just went from 3 years of steady income to nothing. And because I was on a contract, I couldn't even apply for emergency assistance. I couldn't even apply for like EI. So there I was at age 35, 2010, with absolutely no idea where to go forward. My wife was working full time, so she was paying all the bills. She was taking care of everything. And I was feeling like a chump more and more each day. And I wasn't able to get my freelance stuff to happen. I was doing a little bit of stuff on the side, and I was involved with a few art forums, which I was getting my work seen in front of some bigger comic book people, but nothing was latching on. And then finally, when I lost that job, I went about 2 months of just kind of wallowing, and I thought, this is garbage, man. I said I was going to do this. I'm going to do it. And so I started going out and hanging out at a comic shop, and I would just go to the comic shop and be like, can I sit right there all day and just sketch? And I won't bother anybody. I just want to sit in the comic shop and draw, and and then they're like, yeah, sure you can. And I've been a customer there for years, so I'd come in, and Comic Connection here in Oakville, they took care of me. They took me in. They let me just draw. And I mean, I draw a picture of Spider-Man and trade it for a sandwich, because I literally had nothing, and I didn't want to come home every day and tell Erica, like, yeah, I made no money today.
Yeah.
Another day where I've earned nothing. But it started turning into like, well, I made $50 today. I did a sketch of Iron Man for a guy, and he paid me $50. Like, that's more money than I've had in 2 weeks. That's great. Yeah. And so I just built it from there. And then it was around that time that those sketch covers started coming out, and they ended up turning into almost like currency for guys like me. So I started doing those in the store, and people would see me drawing them in the store, and they'd buy them on the spot, or the shop would put them up on eBay and sell them on eBay, and they'd give me the money. So I started building this little thing, and then it was some local comic shop. Actually, they wanted to start doing variant covers, and so I started doing variant covers for things like Nailbiter at Image, or Wicked and Divine, Captain Canuck. And
actually, I was just skimming through eBay to put your title in when we were discussing that, and there's quite a few of your variant covers that I didn't realize that I didn't realize I own. I've the die one I have, I'm pretty sure, and.
I love that die one.
Turtles Jennika one, I think I have. Your Kick-Ass one I have. Like, that's crazy. I had no idea. So I did a bit of research, obviously knowing you for years about you, and even stuff that I don't know. So it's amazing.
Yeah,
lots of amazing covers out there.
Thanks, man. It's been every time I get a cover, it's like a giddy schoolboy moment. Like, I'm always like, it doesn't matter who it is. But like ever since I started up with Big Country Comics, which is a company that's out in Shiloh, Manitoba. A good friend of mine out there's a Canadian soldier, and he had this business on the side. He wants to do this, start building variant covers and start building an online retail business. And he has. And so the first cover I did for him was actually that Jennika cover. And it was also the first time I got to work with the Turtles, which meant it was the first time I had to work with IDW in that capacity. I've done pinups for IDW, but you're just a pinup.
So how does that work? Does IDW just like, do you say, I want to order your comics, but I want there to be like a region-specific variant, and here's the art from that we procured, you use it? Or do they have to vet you and do all that sort of stuff? Or?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So it's a little bit like, stores like, okay, so Jennika #1 is coming out in a couple months, and we got enough time to know that it's coming out because it's been kind of hinted at. Yeah. So he basically contacted IDW and said, I'd love to do a variant cover. And then they worked out all the math on that and all the money, because it's not a cheap thing to do. But he just has so much faith in me, and he's like, I know I can always sell your covers. Like, I know we're going to make money at this. Like, I know it's going to be fine. So he had me do that cover, and I got to work with IDW. And so IDW didn't give me any art direction. They just said, she's a female turtle. She's a former assassin of human assassin of Shredder of the Foot Clan, and she has now been by a blood transfusion and a weird mutagen kind of thing. She's become a Ninja Turtle, and she's now kind of at one point, I guess Splinter becomes leader of the Foot Clan, and so she kind of fucks it against that because she was loyal to Shredder.
After Shredder died,
yeah. So then she's kind of, now she's this turtle, and so I didn't know anything about the story other than that I knew she was stronger than the guys. She was bigger and stronger because she was a human first.
Yeah.
And that she was super athletic, and she could do amazing leaps. And so I didn't know much about her. That was just what the wiki page told me. So they didn't give me any art direction. They just said, just come up with something cool and, bounce off some sketches and we'll see what happens. So I sent them 3 ideas, and all 3 got chosen. And the one that they ended up going with, the bear one that I did, that was kind of like a little nod because I was working on that comic Dodge, which is about a mutant, about a werebear.
Yes.
And which you did a pinup for. And it's so that was pretty cool. I wanted to kind of virally insert Dodge into the cover. And the idea was that it's her own solo book. So I wanted to represent the other 4 turtles on there. That's why there's the headband tied around the bear's arm. And then I put that out there. And, man, you wouldn't believe the hate mail I started to get. Oh, man, people commenting like, as if some bear could kill all the 4 turtles and all that's left is a girl turtle. As if it wouldn't have killed her first. Or I'd hear things like, I've been reading the turtles for 25 years, and how dare you destroy my childhood? Destroy your childhood?
It's a cover.
I did a variant cover. I had no art direction. I just did my own thing.
Man.
And I'm like, hold on a second. You said you haven't read the Turtles for 25 years. I don't think you get to have a vote anymore, man. Yeah. If you haven't consumed the product in 25 years, you're out of touch. So what do you care if there's a girl on the Turtles team? Like, what do you care? Like, I get so mad at these guys, but I would always try to, I try to be like, hey, I'm sorry I ruined your childhood. I'm just trying to do my job,
It's so like that side of fandom, especially the comic fandom, like when the Comicsgate thing came out where like everyone was really picking on women in comics and stuff. It's it's like the worst part of this fandom, like by far the worst. Like people thinking they own these characters and that they have dominion over them, and that like it's like any kind of, it's weird how violently angry like the sort of nerd community gets whenever there's any shift or change. I mean, Star Wars itself has become, some of the fandom in that is so toxic. Comics too, like especially like lately there's been a resurgence in them kind of giving existing comic roles to other characters. Like there's a new Iron Man or a new Hulk, and there might be a minority, and people really push against that. Like they freak out. If they're a woman or a minority, they lose their shit. They're like, what, Iron Man's a black woman now? No, like, come on. Just read the comic and enjoy it. Or don't if you don't want to read it. But man.
I know. Like, it's like you don't, like, it's like when the thing that really got me, this is what killed me. You get these guys who are 38 and 40 years old, and they're going off like it's the end of the world because they made a new She-Ra cartoon. And the new She-Ra cartoon, it's just an absolute insult to the old show, and it's all this. And I'm listening to these guys talk, and I'm thinking, hold on, man. You're a 40-year-old man. So when She-Ra, the original She-Ra was out, guess what, lunatic? It wasn't for you either. Yeah. And it's cool that you enjoyed it. It's cool that you obviously have passion for it. Yeah. Because you're angry. You're foaming at the mouth because someone did a gender swap on a character or simply made She-Ra seem more tomboyish or whatever problem they had with it. It wasn't a living Frazetta painting anymore.
Yeah, it didn't fit their feminine ideals or whatever. So
like, you weren't watching She-Ra anyway, dude. So what do you care now that you're 40? Like, how does it even affect your life in any way?
Somebody summed it up real well. I think it was like somewhere, and he was saying how he was like, Ninja Turtles, the turtles aren't the same as they were when I was a kid. When I was a kid, Vanilla Ice was there, and they were like, and he was like, and they were fighting the Super Shredder, and mom and dad were still together, and everyone was happy, and right there was where it comes to the end to be like, yes, that's exactly where it links. That like, this is when I was a kid. My dopamine levels are really high. Everything was wonderful. The comics I read made me happy. I want that forever. Never change it. If you do, you're spitting on the memory of my happiness when I read them when I was a kid. And it's like, that's what kills me. It's like, nobody's taking it away from you. When like they made a female Ghostbusters movie, people are like, you're ruining my Ghostbusters. It's like, nobody, it's not like Melissa McCarthy is going to kick in the door to your house, take your copies of Ghostbusters, punch you in the face and leave.
Tear
And they're
down
gone
your
forever.
career.
Yeah, they're gone. They're erased from existence. If you don't want to watch it, don't. Go watch
so easy.
Enjoy them.
It's so simple. And, you know, that's the thing. It's like, I'll be honest with you. I love the original Star Wars trilogy. And I love The Mandalorian because it had a lot to do. Like, to me, it had that same kind of flavor.
Yeah.
And I don't care about I don't care about episodes 1 to 3, and I don't care about episodes 6 to 9. They didn't do much for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit and beat them up because you know what? I had my Star Wars time, man. I had a glorious, glorious childhood built upon the mythology of Star Wars. I don't have to care what happened before, what happened after, because I was there in that moment. And this isn't for me. This new stuff's not for me. Yeah. Clearly, it's not doing it. I mean, the music still sounds good, and I still get that feeling in the audience, and it's always cool to see Chewie on screen. But it's not my Star Wars, and I'm grown up enough. I'd like to think I am that I can be okay with that.
Yeah, I agree. I like the new ones. Okay, like I understand everybody's issues with the last.
Sure, yeah.
I understand everybody's issues with the Rise of Skywalker. I get it. But I just like watching Star Wars. So like I like lightsabers. I like watching good guys versus bad guys. Yep. I enjoy it. Like I love The Mandalorian. I think it's probably the best thing they're creating now.
Me too. I think it's so great. It's so much fun.
I thought Solo was better than Rogue One, and I'm in the minority of that. But I agree. It was just a fun space western. Yep. You know, I got a fun space western where there's cowboys and bad guys, and it's in space. So I was happy. Like that's enough for me. Like it just makes me happy. And like, but when Lucas made the original Star Wars, they were for kids, really. I mean, and then when he made the new ones, they were for that generation's kids, the late 90s, early 2000s. And they're the ones that are adults now that are, you know, getting into the new ones, or their kids are getting into the new ones and like dressing up as Rey and BB-8 and all that sort of stuff and enjoying those characters. So it's a rich tapestry. I would rather there be more and occasionally one that's not that great than nothing ever. And we only could have watched, you know, those ones sometimes.
Absolutely.
Without that, we wouldn't have got The Mandalorian or any.
You know what? I'm a huge Thor guy. And those movies didn't blow my mind. But you know what? If you could go back and tell 10-year-old Mike that one day he'd get to sit in the theater and watch a Thor movie, well, he wouldn't believe you for one. Yeah. But like, I try to put.
Well, you didn't watch the live action Hulk and Thor movie from with Bill Bixby?
That's my favorite Thor movie. That's my favorite Thor movie. It is. I watched that thing 10 million times on VHS, man. That was my favorite movie. You
can watch Vincent D'Onofrio in Adventures in Babysitting. There's your other Thor. That's all you got. Thor Ragnarok didn't blow you away. I figured with your mentality, your love of heavy metal, and your love of that art style, I figured Thor Ragnarok would be ready for that. Visually, it hit all of those notes for me. Yeah. I mean, even the opening bit when the dragon's head comes through and gets cut off by the portal, that dragon's head is right off the pages of Walter Simonson's Thor. Like, I was like, this is magic. And I think by the time the movie ended, I was still very much in love with the film. And in I remember it was weird. It was like the drive home from the theater to our place. I kind of started to pick it apart in my head on the way home. And by the time I got into our driveway, I was already in a big fury about how angry I was about the movie. And the reason I was mad, it had anything to do with Thor. I mean, to me, a couple things. One, it's a bit too comedic. To me, Thor has never been a comedy book. And so seeing it as a very comedic film, that was a weird flavor for me. I mean, I know a lot of old guy Thor fans like me kind of felt that way too. In the context of what he was sort of a comic relief, like fish out of water character in Avengers. Yeah. They just sort of extrapolated. I do agree. They did went hard on comedy. I feel like Marvel saw how good Guardians of the Galaxy did, and they're like, let's just do more of that.
That's pretty much it.
It's fine. Like Taika Waititi is an amazing writer and director. I haven't seen anything by him I haven't thoroughly loved.
I know. Everything's brilliant. Everything that guy makes is brilliant.
And he's bringing in the the next movie with the Natalie Portman playing the Jane Foster Thor. That's gonna be really fun. Like I'm excited.
I'm into that. I didn't think they were gonna bring Jane back. I didn't think she was all that great as Jane Foster. I didn't really care for that character in the films because of the way she was handled. She was kind of like they didn't really give her a whole lot of substance. But I feel like seeing her come back in the role of Thor, I'm into that. I didn't mind I love Jane Foster, the character, and I didn't have any problem with Jane Foster Thor because Jason Aaron handled that stuff so well that I was already ready for Jane Foster. Thor had lost his arm and was lost his hammer and was a drunk. Yeah. And then, you know, Jane steps up and she's Thor. And it was the artwork was great. The story was great. I enjoyed it. But
the regular format for this, like these interviews that I do, like with you now, I do every 4th episode is one of these. But in between every episode, I just go through the history of a character in comics.
Oh, cool.
And, Jane Foster was one of the earlier ones because they announced the Love and Thunder thing, and I wanted to check it out. So I learned a lot about her. The early, I read some of the Thor Essentials a while ago, from the start all the way up. And a lot of it is just her constantly pining for Dr. Donald Blake, and then getting angry when he doesn't return or show any sign of affection to her, which he has, but he just can't because Odin won't let him. So it's a lot of well, why won't you marry me or love me? And then it's well, I can't. And then it's and then the next week it's all kind of back to normal, and that happens again. So
I mean, she's been around. The fact that she became the new mystery Thor, I was so happy it was her because she's been there since issue 1. She's been there since the very beginning of Thor.
Oh yeah.
My big problem with Thor Ragnarok, and Erica's probably heard me rant about this a million times, but my major issue with it actually has nothing to do with Thor or Thor mythos. My problem with it is, and I know why they did it this way, Planet Hulk is probably one of the best Hulk comics.
So you're upset that they shoehorned it into that instead of giving it its own thing.
They took the best parts of Planet Hulk story and they made a Thor comedy movie out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I couldn't understand, because to me, the Planet Hulk is such an incredible story, especially when you start to tie in things like it was the superheroes of Earth who sent Thor away, or sent Hulk away.
Imagine if they had done that. If in the Marvel universe we have, they did that.
I know.
Iron Man and then decide to send him away, and then that's that'd be so much better.
And the whole reason they sent him away was because they knew that Hulk would tip the balance into a civil war that was coming. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful story that was already laid out. So they send Thor out there, Hulk out there, and Planet Hulk is such a great story. I personally feel like it could have been at least a movie, possibly 2 or 3 movies, because it had such a great cast of characters, and there was nothing funny about it. It was a real serious story. So for them to take that kind of stuff and then shoehorn it into a Thor comedy film where, Thor's hammer gets shattered by Hela, and within 5 seconds, Thor's making jokes about it. His lifelong companion of 2,000 years is suddenly gone, and he's like, "Oh, I lost my hammer. I'm pretty sad." There was no, there was no real sense of loss.
I get that.
That might be its own whole movie.
I think Marvel Studios has to jump through a lot of hoops with the Hulks. I think there's some rights issues. That's why he can't have his own solo movie right now.
That's exactly why you.
So it sucks, and I know they're making a She-Hulk movie, which I really hope, or She-Hulk TV series, which I really hope kind of follows the John Byrne method, because I really love those comics. So, maybe breaking fourth walls and stuff might be a bit much for that. But just the comedy, at least some comedy angle to it, I'd be happy to see all that. But there's so many Hulk stories that could be done so well if they just they could have done it in the movie treatment. I feel like they sort of gloss over a lot with them, having him turn into the smart Hulk between movies, and it seems just between Infinity War and Endgame seems like a
We also just didn't get a lot of Hulk. We didn't get. It must be pretty expensive to have him on screen, because we didn't get a lot of him. Yeah. And then even in the last movie, when it's just Mark Ruffalo's head floating on the Hulkbuster armor. Yeah. I was like, ugh, that looks like Mark Ruffalo's head floating on Hulkbuster armor. Is it so hard to make the Hulk happen? Because we got ripped off. I feel like we got ripped off by the. I don't have a problem with him as Banner. I thought he was great.
I think originally he was supposed to become Hulk in that fight. Because they put out a pop figure of the Hulk ripping out of the Hulkbuster armor from the movie. Yep. And I feel like that's where it was probably supposed to go, but then for whatever reason, either rights-wise or time-wise,
I know
they scrapped it. But you could tell that's the way it was supposed to go, which would have made sense, because there's an arc of him and the Hulk fighting for control. And if at the end of that fight, the two of them came to a realization that they need to work together and be one to be whole, and then he rips out, and then he's the smart Hulk from then on out. That would be a 5-minute sequence, or a 2-minute sequence maybe they could have put into that and taken out something else or whatever if they needed for time. That would have wrapped that a whole lot much better, in my opinion.
I know.
I love those movies, so I can't pick apart too much.
Sure.
But that's something that.
Hey, I enjoy them because they exist. Even the really bad ones. I mean, if you go back again, talk to Childhood Mike and tell him it's going to be an Ant-Man movie, he's going to be like, why would they do that? But you know what? The Ant-Man movies are probably my favorite ones in the bunch, because I like Paul Rudd, and I think the movies are fun. And even the last one, when that hook at the end, you've had this light, fun movie, and at the end there's just these ashes floating up, and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was good. I know Erica likes those ones the best. Out of
yeah. I mean, if you would have told kid me I'd see Mysterio in a Spider-Man movie.
Oh my God! And
like, and it was so well done. That whole
it was so well done.
The whole sequence when he was going through like the end with the zombie Iron Man, all that, it was so good.
And
like,
for years, I kept on saying, I hope they never do some Mysterio in a movie. I hope they never do Mysterio because they'll never do him right. They'll look terrible. They'll change the costume. You're never going to get the Ditko dome head.
Yeah, and you did. We did.
And
they
did it. Yeah, and they gave us the gauntlets. They gave us everything. I was like,
Gyllenhaal's a great actor. Obviously anybody that's read comics knew where the double turn was coming, but when it did, and they're having the whole party in the bar, and they're just getting drunk and like, oh, good job you, and good job you, like all the people into the conspiracy, and the guy from Iron Man 1, they brought him back, the kid from Christmas Story. Like, it was just so cool. Like, it was just like, they're really right now, especially with like the Falcon and the Hulk series, they're really rewarding you for paying attention and being here for the whole ride. Like getting Daniel Bruhl back as Zemo and putting him in the purple mask. Like, it's almost like any decision you don't necessarily agree with, like as a representation of the character, if you kind of wait a little while, it's almost like they'll fix it. You just got to wait. It's like a roundabout way. So like to see Bruhl as Zemo in that movie, to see the U.S. agent coming in, the John Walker character, probably replacing like all that stuff. The She-Hulk series and Ruffalo and like the Scarlet Witch thing and what they're going to do with all that stuff. It's just, I'm really excited to see what the next stage is. I think Secret Wars is where they're headed next, but
I think so. It won't be the one that we got when we were kids, but it will be something like that.
But I really want to see a good version of the Fantastic Four, and I really has the right.
Before I die, just once, give me one good Fantastic
Just
Four.
One. The only good thing out of the entire old movies was Doug Jones as the Silver Surfer. That was it.
Yeah,
but with Lawrence Fishburne's voice for some reason.
What happened there? I mean, I don't get that. Like that, Doug Jones would have been perfect for that. But
I'm hoping beyond hope that my dream casting for the Fantastic Four, I don't think I'm going to get exactly all of them, but I think I'm going to get most of them. So John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, which I really think is probably going to happen. Talking to Marvel. He fits the role perfectly. He'd be really good at it. His wife, Emily Blunt, would be a great Invisible Woman.
Yes,
she was supposed to be the Black Widow, but she passed for something else. So that would give her that spot. I think Efron would be a great Human Torch. Zac Efron.
Yeah.
Bring him in. He's the cocky, pretty boy. He plays that well. And John Cena as the Thing. I love him as a wrestler. I think he's a great actor too. And I mean, he'd mostly be CGI anyway, but when he's human, he would look like a great military pilot guy.
You know what? He's the perfect age right now.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I never thought of John Cena.
I don't know if
he can do that tough guy New York accent, but if he can,
that's true. I guess if you wanted to give him the Brooklyn accent, then maybe not. But
I'm sure he can pull it off, though. He's a pretty clever guy.
Actually,
I'm a fan of John Cena the man. I can't say I'm a fan of his in-ring work, but I am a fan of John Cena the human being.
Lee Schreiber's Brooklyn accent as the Kingpin in the Spider-Verse comic the Spider-Verse movie was pretty solid.
Oh, that was him, yeah.
Yeah. Like, he had a pretty good Brooklyn accent in that, so,
That's still my favorite superhero movie of all time.
Well, actually, since you're a big Fantastic Four fan, I've been reading John Byrne's run on the Thing. That's what I've been reading right now, the solo series.
It's so good.
It's really good.
It's so good. It's so God, there's some issues of that will still bring tears to my eyes.
I just read the one with the mother with the mutant kid, and the town wants to kill the kid.
That's the one I was just thinking of.
Yeah, I just read it. And it ends so... For people who haven't read it, I'm going to spoiler. I mean, the series is like 40 years old now, or 50 probably. It's old. But it was in the 80s he did it. But there's like a mother who has a son who's like a mutant. They don't really establish as to why he's the way he is. But he looks not human, and he lives in like the house, and the town think he's a monster, and they want to kill him. And the Thing kind of gets dropped into the situation with Lockjaw, the inhuman dog. And they're trying to protect the kid from the town. The town kills the mother by accident. They throw a rocket, hits her, and kills her. The son is so upset, and the town sees the effects of what they have acted like. And at the end, after burying the woman, Lockjaw takes the child to live with the Inhumans on the moon. And the Thing is sitting there with I think the cop from the town or something, sheriff, and he says he'll be safe there. There's no monsters on the moon. And it was like it's such a nice.
Just hearing you say it, man. It's
the monsters are the people. They're the monsters.
Yep.
And like he's safe from the monsters, which are humans, horrible humans.
It's
It was
such
a very
powerful, simple little story.
and hidden in a comic that wasn't known. Like comics weren't really known for their social commentary then.
No.
They didn't really put a lot of that in. So
that Thing series that you just mentioned, for those reasons, it was my favorite. But then
Dan Slott's run was really good too.
It was good, yeah.
Yeah, I like his
love
side.
the Thing series because he becomes a pro wrestler eventually.
Yeah.
And he becomes like a champion pro wrestler. And it's this whole league built around, the Unlimited Class Wrestling League.
Yep.
And that's where you get Demolition Dumpty. D-Man comes
Yep.
from there.
And actually, the U.S. agent comes from there too. I just did an episode, on this.
And also Sharon Ventura, who's the
Yep.
She-Thing. She comes from there as well. And also Songbird.
Right, yeah.
Books because she was Screaming Mimi, the pro wrestler in that book.
Right.
And that book, literally, for me, it scores a 10 out of 10 because it hit every single thing I needed as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like 8 or 10 years old. It had my favorite character. I mean, for a big chunk of that series is the space adventures of Rocky Grimm. He's on the Secret Wars planet. He can change back and forth at will. He has full command of his body. And he is, in the first time in his life, truly, truly happy with who he is, and none of it's real. Mm-hmm. And that's the real tragedy of it all. When the Secret Wars planet starts to unravel, and the Thing stays there at the end with Tatiana, who's become the woman of his dreams while he's there, and she's complete fiction, come from his own mind, and he doesn't even know, because he's sitting on this world where anything he does becomes real. And he's there holding her hand as she evaporates from existence, and he just pushes the button, and he blips back to Earth, and his little story of Rocky Grimm is over. And what's he do? He arrives on Earth. He's like, well, I'm home. And he can turn back into his human form, and he turns back, and he's got a beard and a ponytail, and he's like, I'm home. I'm going to go see Alicia. And he grabs some flowers, and he goes running to Alicia's house, and he knocks on the door, and Johnny Storm answers the door wearing a towel. And the Thing is just devastated.
Yeah.
And I was devastated. I was like, how dare you? And now I know why the Thing wasn't on the FF while he was in Secret Wars, and they had She-Hulk. But I didn't know this was going on with Johnny and Alicia. And here's Things come back, and the woman of his dreams is gone. And now the woman that it's always been the woman of his dreams, the blind sculptress Alicia, now she's with Johnny. And like, it just, you could always guarantee, I mean, for me as a kid, getting bullied and whatever happened as a kid, like growing up and having the knowledge that whatever kind of bad day I was having, well, Ben Grimm was probably having a worse day. And he's still on his feet. He's still doing his thing. So for me, that kind of was a real guide for me. The Thing was I get emotional. The Thing is a super important character, and it's like that issue that you referenced in particular. It's that kind of humanity that the Thing gets across. With a good writer, he gets that across. And yeah, man, it really affected me.
He's been a great character, and I'm really hoping. I really want to see him represent it well in a.
Oh, me too. I think in Marvel Studios' hands, they're going to do a real job.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith. They haven't steered me wrong yet. So.
Yeah. I've been happy with it more or less. Like I said, I can nitpick a lot of things, but it's more important to me that these films even exist.
Well, I've been really hard on DC for some of their decisions when it comes to their movies. So because I've been really, I don't know. I just feel like tonally they take a lot of. They want everything to be Chris Nolan's Batman, and it doesn't. It shouldn't be Chris Nolan's Batman. Not everything should be. Superman shouldn't be a dark, murdering.
No.
Like when I watched the first Superman movie, Man of Steel, in the theater, and. John Kent is like Clark Kent's like, well, should I have let all those kids die just to protect my secret? And his dad's like, maybe. I was like, all right, this is not the Superman that I want in a movie.
Well, and then you get like BVS or whatever.
Yeah, that was so bad.
You have this movie. They should have just called that movie Machine Gun Wayne Kills Again. Because the whole movie was just Bruce Wayne murdering people with machine guns. The whole
Machine Gun Wayne.
And I'm just like, what is this movie where Batman kills everyone with a Gatling gun? Like, I don't know that Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought he looked good as Batman.
I liked his version. I thought the costume was awesome, and he looked fine. But it's just
like, how do you get the character so wrong? Now, granted, Batman did start out with a gun in the old original days. That's
sure.
True. But I think in given all that history, 80 years of history, we've come a long way with the character.
Yeah.
And, to me, the most iconic thing is when Frank Miller has him break the shotgun and say, these are the weapons of our enemies,
Yeah. And when he says, like, because guns killed his parents, he always rallies against them. That's part of it. So, to see that. But anyway, I don't know. I feel like I want to see like an Arkham Asylum level. Like if you ever played those video games, that sort of Batman, like a cool, darker Batman fighting cool, dark hero, but super powered villains. You know, like the Nolan movies I really enjoyed, but they're honestly like melodramatic action movies more than really superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like I felt like Avengers, the Marvel stuff in the Avengers, that was the first movie that I was like, man, I just felt like I watched a comic book. Yeah. Like I really watched a comic book, like with the action, the color, the fights, everything. That's the first one I really felt. And I was high, like almost walking out of the theater. I was so happy.
Oh yeah.
It was so
For me,
fun.
it was the first Iron Man to me hit those notes where it was like I walked out going, okay, that's the origin of Iron Man. And yeah, it may not be the perfect original origin of Iron Man, and maybe they threw in a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they modernized it. But that is the core essential story of Iron Man. Yeah. And they got it right. And you know, that's a rare thing because they get so much wrong. And they get so much obvious stuff wrong. It's like the new Hellboy film. I really had high hopes for that. I had huge high hopes for that.
Yeah.
There's so many things it could have been, yet they overlooked so many huge basic things, but yet they introduced some lovely little Easter eggs and details, and I was like, yeah, more of that. But if you don't have the fundamentals and the core stuff established, none of that means anything. Certainly not the viewer in the audience who's never heard of it.
I really wish they would have just let Del Toro finish his trilogy. I would have loved to see the third one. But David Harbour was a fantastic choice. Great Hellboy. To me, he's the best part, like by far, of the movie. I mean, everything else around him is pretty bad, but I liked his version, and I liked the way he acted it.
There were some story issues. Like, for me, I didn't like how they didn't really establish why he and his father had this issue, why they had these problems. So to me, that whole movie was like the teenage adventures of angry, pissed-off teenage Hellboy.
Yeah.
You know,
but they shoehorned like the Wild Hunt and a lot of other things into it too.
They did. And I think the fight with the giant was cool, and the pig guy was perfect.
Yeah.
The pig guy was dead on. And there were some things that, again, you see the pig guy, and you're like, they know what the fuck they're doing. How can they get this so wrong?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and by the end, when there's just like these colossal blood god things, and they got the other thing, and he's the son of Arthur now, and there's the sword, and it's like all they shoehorned a trilogy of stuff into one movie, and it just,
I know.
It was cool seeing Lobster Johnson, you know.
That was cool actually.
But briefly, but it was you know, I just like the Del Toro ones are done with such love and such style, and they're just so amazingly cool. Yeah. Like I just let him do it. Like I know he's, but just let him. Ron Perlman's still here. Let them do it. Just give him one and let them do it.
It's a tragedy, but I had a lot of high hopes for David Harbour. I thought he filled the costume pretty well. Too much hair though. If I could nitpick about a little detail, there's just so much hair going on there.
Yeah, I think they tried to differentiate it from the Perlman one enough.
I think so.
That was the way they chose to go.
I sometimes wonder if these companies, certainly DC seems to be figuring this out, that their animated stuff is actually quite good.
Yeah.
Films are actually very enjoyable.
They're the best thing they're putting out.
And
in
they're close to the material. Like they're close enough that you don't notice a change. Like,
and it's great too because instead, like you could get the vibe of reading the graphic novel from watching the cartoon as well. Never do it instead of watching the graphic novel, but like it's not a thing they shoehorned into another continuity. You can it's done in the style, the art style, similar to the graphic novel. You get the whole story.
You know, whatever changes from the core material that they made,
for time mainly.
Still doesn't stray from the form. Like
you
know, you have some that just stray so far from the form. You're like, okay, you're missing the point of all this. Like, you know, there's so many things you visually and all these other. The cast is perfect and the visuals are perfect and the setting is perfect, and you're still missing the point of the story. You're still missing what this guy's all about. And I think that happens too often. But you know, I look past it because again, we live in a great age where these things even exist at all.
Yeah.
And for me, like when we went to go see the Black Panther movie, it's not my favorite Marvel movie, but the impact that film had. Mm-hmm. And when Erica and I went to this small little theater here to watch it, every person of color that was at that theater was dressed like they were at the Oscars, and it was a wonderful thing to see. Like I remember. It sounds weird, but I don't feel very in touch with the non-white community of this town because I don't encounter anybody. I'm a hermit. But to go to a movie theater and see numbers of people and everyone dressed like they're going to the Oscars and look just like high points for fashion, and I'm sitting there with a Motorhead shirt on and cut off jeans going, looking like an ape man. But man, like what an event! What a cultural event it was. And,
Yeah.
the movie was. I enjoyed it. I think it might be Erica's favorite of the bunch.
It's quite good. I liked it a lot as well. I think I don't know if I had to pick a favorite. It's probably one of the Avengers ones, but I really like the Spider-Man movie. I'm a huge Spider-Man guy, I always have been. So I really enjoyed their take on the character. I love the version. I think it's really cool. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. I hope this tentative partnership with Sony isn't going to ruin it.
I know.
Based on the trailer for Morbius, I'm like,
I haven't seen that yet, but I know Spidey is perfect. Spidey is perfect.
And Venom didn't wow me. It was fine.
I watched Venom on the plane. It was
fine.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm a Tom Hardy guy.
So am I. But I give it like
the phone book, and I'd watch that movie.
I give it like a 5 out of 10 because like it's fine. It's just middle of the road. It's fine. Like I feel like the part, and maybe it's the designer in me, like the graphic designer, but I really like the fact he doesn't have the white spider in his chest. Really bothers me because he's just a big black blob with a mouth. That's it. Like so when he's fighting the other symbiote, it's just two blobs fighting. Yeah. And like when I was doing one of my intros to a previous podcast, and I was talking about that they announced, what is it? There Will Be Carnage or whatever is the title of the next movie or something, or Let There Be Carnage or something dumb like that. It's titled for the second movie, and I was like, oh, at least now we'll get a red blob to mix up the black blobs that are fighting each other.
And I think that's what I mean. Like when you say the movie was fine, it was fine because it did all the things that all these movies feel like they have to do. Yeah. Which is we have a good guy, so let's create a bad guy who's exactly the same.
Yeah, that's the first one. And then
they did that in, and that's what, and they did that with the Ed Norton Hulk, which I love the Ed Norton Hulk. Yeah. But again, they've got the Abomination. That was a missed opportunity. It could have been an amazing Abomination.
I think we'll see him again. I think so too. Yeah.
I just feel like it's one of those.
And the leader, we never got the leader.
We never got the leader.
And they had a great actor. I love that actor. My brain is skipping that. I can't think of his name.
Oh, what was his name?
He was in the Watchmen series that HBO did as well.
Yeah.
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, yeah. What the heck's his name?
He's in a zombie movie I really like called Fido.
Okay,
It'll come to me in a minute. His name was Looking Glass on the Watchmen series. Have you watched that, the HBO Watchmen series?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, dude, it's stupid good.
It's very good, yeah. I did love The Boys. I thought that was great. I love the comic book.
Oh, yeah.
So even again, like they made some changes from the script to the show.
But same with the Preacher show. I really like that, but they changed a lot too. But
I didn't like the changes in the Boys at all. Like the idea, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't watched it, but like that last episode.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Where you get the reveal of Butcher's past, and it's not the past he thought it was, and you're like, whoa, they're going here with that. That's really weird. So that's exciting though to me because The Boys has been over for 8 years.
I'm curious if Noir is still gonna work out to be who he was.
I know.
So I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't want to ruin it either because
I know.
So good. In the Garth Ennis's new series, the Dear Becky one that's out right now. Have you read it? It's
I got the first issue.
I read the first two. It's pretty good. It's actually a sequel, really, because it picks up with Huey and Annie now. Well, he's, which is cool.
I thought that first issue was great.
Me too. The second one was pretty great. I love his friend, I don't know if he's a cross-dresser or a transvestite or just doesn't identify as one. But I like that the dynamic between those two characters. I think it's really
just
well
the dialogue, that Scottish dialogue when he get that Garth Ennis just gets it so perfect.
Because you hear the accent in your head.
You do.
So back to you. What's it's funny because when I told Brenda I was going to be talking to you, she's like, "That's going to be a huge one." I'm like, "Yeah, it might have to be a few episodes because me and Mike get talking. We could talk for hours."
Oh yeah.
So the Jennika fan cover, like, are you doing a lot of cover? Like, you did some covers for Swamp Thing too, right?
Not for Swamp Thing, no. That's one that's still on the bucket list. Swamp Thing, I'm not even sure. I haven't done any DC or Marvel work yet, but I just finished my second Turtles cover, which is actually a really cool story. It's The Last Ronin, which is a story that
I was going to talk to you about that. It was written in 87.
Eastman and Laird wrote it in 87. The idea was that the story was to take place in 2017. They had this idea for a story that they hinted at back then, and it was the last surviving brother, and he was out to avenge his brothers in this crazy new futuristic New York with flying cars and all this craziness.
Oh, the future world of 2017.
Yeah, that's right. So what happened was in 1988 is when the Turtle Mania happened, and the TV show happened, and the franchise got bought by by Nickelodeon and Hasbro,
Yep.
and all these big things started to happen. And if you watch the Netflix Toys That Made Us episode about the Turtles, it gives you a little bit of that history, and it's a really great.
I gotta watch that show.
It's a really good episode, and this is the cool thing. So around, I don't know the specific dates, but around 1990, Eastman and Laird, who had already made now all this money from the Turtles franchise, they still had intended to make Turtle stuff, but at this point, Eastman was ready to move on and do some other things, and Hasbro really wanted to keep on producing more and more lines of toys, and they wanted to have Jennika, or they wanted to have a female turtle broaden the line, and Eastman was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And
would this be the next mutation one, the Venus
yeah, there was a Fox show that they
did. The live action one.
That was after years of wearing them down, because Laird refused. As far as I understand, Laird would not have anything change the format. It was going to be 4 turtles, 4 brothers, that's it. We're not messing around with what works. So eventually the rift began to form between Eastman and Laird. And eventually, I mean, they've already made so much money at this point. Eventually Eastman's like, well, you know what? I kind of want to do some other shit. I don't really care. I'm going to sell you the rest of my rights to the Turtles, and you can just own full ownership of the Turtles, and it's your baby now. I'm going to go and marry Julie Strain, and I'm going to buy a heavy metal magazine, and I'm going to go and be that guy. And so that's what he did. And Peter Laird was like, cool. So he took his Turtle share, and eventually Hasbro kept coming back and saying, what's it going to cost for us to for us to get the rights from you? What's it going to cost so that we can do, or Nickelodeon or whoever it was, what's the number? So he gave them some astronomical, insane number, and they're like, okay, and they paid him. And that was it. So the Turtles now was no longer in the hands of Eastman and Laird, and they, as 2 friends who grew up together, were no longer speaking.
Yeah.
And so for like 25 years, they didn't speak.
Wow.
And all this stuff happened. Turtles kept on growing. Eastman kept on collecting money, and or they kept on profiting from it. But Kevin Eastman was already doing his other thing. So around that time,
I assume they have royalties in it. They still get paid.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Everything. Yeah.
But eventually, IDW came around and said they wanted to do another Turtles book, and they would love to have one of the original creators on there. And
it's really good. It's really good.
It's over 100 issues.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And he and Peter weren't seeing eye to eye back then, so Kevin jumped back on as like a consultant and writer for the book, and kind of the rest is history. Now that Netflix show actually reunited the two because they had interviews with them both, and then in that episode you actually see them meet for the first time in decades, and they sit and they have a conversation, and then like 6 months after that show aired, all of a sudden The Last Ronin's coming out, and they've got
awesome.
Andy Kuhn has drawn it, so the artwork is incredible. And the story is now taking place in 2047 to make up for the 30 years that they weren't speaking. And also because we don't have flying cars yet. 2016 is now the past. So so they're telling this story now, and I have no idea who the turtle is.
So you don't know. I wouldn't expect you could tell me anyway.
No,
but yeah,
they wouldn't tell us. I don't even know if the guy drawing the book knows, to be honest with you. Because I think
the conceit for I guess fans that are joining us and learning about this is that in the future all the turtles are dead except for one. And who carries the weapons of all of his fallen turtles. Yeah. And it is like on a revenge mission or something to that effect. I'm curious. Yeah. I hope it's Donatello just because he's my favorite, and he's not the one you'd expect. Everyone would expect it to probably be Michelangelo just because he'd be like the party guy that has to become really grow up because of what happens to all his friends. And he's also, Raphael makes sense, and Leonardo makes too much sense too. Yeah. So
see, originally I thought it was Raphael because I'm sure that's what they had intended to.
Because he's the cool one everybody likes.
And he's the toughest. He's the toughest, and he's the baddest. And if anyone was going to survive that long, it was going to be him.
Yeah.
And I know that they did some stories about, I know him and Bisley did some, that body count book that they did with us, a team-up book of, it's Raphael and Casey Jones just kicking ass. But it's all drawn by Simon Bisley, so it's all crazy and ultra-violent.
Oh, I remember that.
It's so good. It's so good. I always kind of thought that was the direction that they were going to go in for Last Ronin, because I remember them talking about Last Ronin.
It's almost like the Dark Knight Returns, but for Ninja Turtles.
Pretty much, and it looks like it too. If you go to your, I'm not sure if they had a free comic book day event. I know they moved it to the summertime, but some locations.
I think a few of them are. I think they're peppering them out over the summer because I believe they put out a few of them already. But I'm not
there was a Last Ronin special comic book day Ashcan that was released, and it's like a 6-pager with the cover. that is really rare now. They're already selling for ridiculousness on eBay, but they've all been damaged. Apparently, they were all damaged with the printer, but people are still flipping big bucks because it's a 6-page teaser about what happens in the story, and it's really just whatever the turtle is, whoever he is. It's him, and he's hearing the voices of his brothers, or he's hearing, maybe there's a microphone or something, but there's a dialogue happening, and he's trying to break into this city, and he's using a grappling hook, and there's robot drones flying around, and it's really, it looks beautiful. It's Andy Kuhn artwork, so it's just gorgeous artwork. And it really has that Dark Knight Returns feel. It really feels like that book. I can't explain it except that, yeah, I think you can probably find the 6-page teaser online now because it's in a book now. But if you can check that out, it's really good. And it doesn't reveal anything except it gives you a look of what's going on. And he's out for revenge. But yeah, that was an exciting one to work on. And the guys at Big Country Comics, they wanted to do something really special. So I did a wraparound front and back cover. And they had this idea where it was going to be like a winding sewer system, and we were going to have all these enemies of the Turtles' past kind of like piled up in droves in the back.
Oh, wow, that'd be awesome.
And so that's the concept that I went with. But as I was going, I decided that since we didn't know who was in the book, I wanted to keep it kind of limited. So Bebop and Rocksteady are on there, and there's also Leatherhead on there, and there's some Mauser robots, but the rest are all just foot soldiers. And,
I'm looking at it right now, actually. It's beautiful.
Thanks, man. So
yeah.
Originally, it was going to be a full color cover, and I had handed in the black and white artwork, and because you have to get with IDW and Nickelodeon, you have to get everything approved. Every stage has to be approved before.
Yeah.
So I sent in my inks, and they were approved, and so I was just starting to get coloring, and the guy said, "Let's do this instead." And they showed me a vintage copy of issue 3 of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which were all done with like blue and black monogram.
Blue and black, yeah.
And so I did this blue. I said, let's go with the blue black. Let's go that way. And so they liked that, and we went with it. And so that's what we decided to go with for the cover. And then about a week after we revealed that to everybody, and people were like loving it, and we were getting a lot of love. It was selling really well. I decided that because I originally imagined it in full color in my head, I had to see it through. So I decided to put the time in and color it anyway, just for my own interest. And so I did a full color version, which I'm going to be making available as a free print for every single person that buys a copy of the book. So that's the deal. If you go to bigcountrycomics.com, they have all my books there. I did a couple of Sumerian Red Nails. I got to draw Conan, but not from Marvel, which is really kind of cool. Because Blaze Publishing got the rights to publish all of the French material that they had done. Because in Europe, you can print Conan comics all day long because Conan is already public domain. But there's a caveat. You can't print it in English. You can print it in Czech or Russian or French or whatever you want, but not in English. And so Blaze Publishing, somehow in the States, they got the rights to be able to take that European Conan stuff, which is all based on the Robert E. Howard original books, and then take that and convert it back into English, which is weird because I think they kind of maybe use Google Translate to convert it back.
Oh, God.
So there's some parts where you're like, I don't think Robert E. Howard said it quite like that. The beautiful thing is they actually include the original Robert E. Howard short story script in the back of each.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You can actually read the source material and you can see where they did some changes. Because the French definitely took, Glenat Publishing, they definitely took some liberties with the stories, but not in a way that harms the material. It just adds like a different flavor to it. And so, for a chance to work on Conan, right under the nose of Marvel, because Marvel's got the Conan franchise, and they're doing all these like Conan's an Avenger now, and Conan's in space, Conan's part of the Nova Corps.
It's so insane. Like
Bananas.
Marvel just got the rights to Alien and Predator as well to do in comics. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that. Are we going to get like Predator versus the Avengers or Aliens versus the Avengers? Which you probably will. I can almost bet.
I wrote a Conan and Predator story, which I was pitching to Dark Horse actually. And I was just getting some help writing it.
They did a Predator Tarzan crossover, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
So they're planning to. Yeah, I don't know if it actually happened.
I think they did.
They might have, yeah. I just had this idea that was perfect in my head of Conan. The story starts off with like Predators in a damaged ship. He crash lands in the Hyborian Age. And he wakes up and the ship is in the self-repair mode. So while it's restoring itself, he goes out to just wander and see what kind of things there are to kill. Mm-hmm. And what he sees is a huge Aquilonian caravan heading back to their base. And in their midst, in a cage, is Conan in a cage. And so for this interests the Predator. And so he watches this caravan return to their castle, and he's kind of in the shadows watching. And he's got his eyes fixated on this man in the cage who's walking around like a wolf in a cage, and he knows he's interested in this guy. And he sees Conan. How did I write it again? So Conan, how did this go? Shit, I'm gonna forget. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries.
The story begins with the caravan carrying Conan, and they see the ship crash. And so the captain sends a crew of 6 guys to go out and check out the crash site because a star has fallen. Yeah. So these guys ride out there, and the Predator comes out of his damaged ship, and he sees these guys coming at him, and so he pulls out his weapons and just starts blasting these guys apart. And then he walks over to inspect their bodies, and he realizes that they all have primitive weapons. And he's suddenly like, well, his ship's in constant repair mode, so while his ship's repairing, he's going to follow these guys and see where they're going. And that's when he notices Conan in the cage. And I did it in such a way that, I can't remember now because the story changed it, but he kind of sends a rocket into their midst, and it kind of blows up a bunch of them, but it knocks the cage that Conan's in over and damages the cage. And Conan gets out of the cage, and even though he's got chains on, he obviously dispatches 5 or 10 soldiers with his bare hands. And the Predator's watching this invisibly in the trees going, yeah, that's the one that I want to hunt. And so he goes back to his ship, and he turns in all of his weapons, and he grabs a spear off the wall.
Yeah.
On the hunt, and that's how issue 1 ends. And then I had the whole thing written out where it actually ties into the movie. It's pretty weird, but it was so much fun. And I told the whole story at a panel, and I'm not trying to brag or anything.
Yeah.
But everyone at the panel was like, "You have to make that comic book." So, now
I want to read it. That sounds amazing.
So maybe I'll pitch it. We'll see. But
totally. I'm sure the people at Dark Horse are listening to this, and if so, I mean,
yeah.
Actually, or Marvel, I guess now, but Marvel, yeah, I guess you could do Marvel.
Yeah.
So yeah, Marvel.
That's what derailed it all. I was reading about to pitch it, and then they lost the Marvel rights, and they went to.
But now they're all there now, so you can do it.
They're all there.
So I feel like the Predator formula is simple, and I've been having this conversation with the end of the day. After they keep remaking Predator movies and they keep not doing that well, I like the Predators. The last one they made, Predators. The last one they made, the Predator was not great, but you could just take it and drop it into like make a Predator trilogy. Put one in the Wild West. Put one where he's fighting soldiers in the Crusades, and do one with in Vietnam or something. You could just drop them into those scenarios, and you got a movie almost ready made. I was telling my buddy, he's been wanting to go find the old Dark Horse runs on Predator vs. Aliens and all those comics, and I was saying they were great, and I said, but Aliens never, and they didn't really have an ongoing series. It was just a ton of miniseries that kept coming out, almost one on top of the other before the other ended. But there was one called Alien Salvation was the one that Mignola did. But there's one Beowulf or something, and it was the Viking one. But it was almost I said it almost lends itself perfectly to Vikings running into a xenomorph. So that's Beowulf, and then the alien mother, xenomorph, being Grendel's mother. So the storyline almost lines up perfectly. Think about what a movie that would be. That'd be so awesome.
That would be fantastic. I wish they would have given us an actual Predator versus Aliens movie without any humans in it.
Yeah.
I would love to go and watch a 2-hour art film that was literally might as well be a silent film.
Yeah.
You have these 2 races that don't even speak the same language, but they're aliens and they're hunting each other. I think there's so much potential there.
I'm a continuity nut, so the fact that they're aliens fought Predator on Earth back when they were primitive times here for us.
Yeah,
I'm okay, so that makes sense. And then they put out friggin' Prometheus, and I'm oh wait, that doesn't make any sense now. None of this lines up. Aliens weren't created till our future, so how were the Predators fighting them in the past? And I know in the way movies are going now, you're just supposed to put that aside and just enjoy the movie itself. But there's a deep part of me that's no, it doesn't make sense. And I think it's because maybe that's why I gravitate towards Marvel more than DC. It's because their continuity is still intact. And doing this podcast where I have to explain certain histories of characters, it gets tough when I'm all right, so Mr. Freeze was this way until they did this, and then he came back this way until they did another retcon, and then he's this way, and then they did this final retcon, and now he's this way. So it's it really makes it super confusing for the layman to be oh yeah, so every once in a while DC does a universe-altering continuity shift where you have to relearn everything again. Some of the previous stuff matters, some of it doesn't. You don't really know until they acknowledge it, and it's confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much great stuff that can happen with crossovers and with that kind of fandom. Like,
Yeah.
I did a drawing once just for fun of Predator standing there with his the claws up, and on one of the claws is he's just retrieved the Green Lantern ring.
Oh, yeah.
He's just looking at it he curiously, and in the background is Kilowog, and Kilowog's dead on the ground with a big hole where his belly used to be. And I just thought, wouldn't that be cool if, like, Kilowog, you know, Space Cop Green Lantern, gets a weird distress call from some, like, little planet, flies out there, is looking around, and just suddenly turns around and gets surprised by a predator who sends, like, a grenade into his guts and kills him, and then he's dead. And I love Kilowog, but, like, all of a sudden the predator has a Green Lantern ring, and I'm like, that would be interesting. Like, we could have some fun with that. And I just
I'm a sucker for a good crossover. Like, totally.
If it's fun, why not? I mean,
I have a bunch of collections of like the DC ones with like Superman and Aliens, Batman and Predator, all the Batman Predator ones, like Batman and Judge Dredd. Even when DC and Marvel did their crossovers, like those are fun. The Amalgam universe, I bought all of the Amalgam comics off of Amazon because I was like, having deep nostalgia to try them.
I mean, Dark Claw, are you kidding me? How awesome is that, right? Like,
and even Lobo the Duck, all those books were fun. They were really fun.
The only thing I didn't like about the Marvel and DC fight when they had them.
Oh, yeah, because they voted on them.
They were just such a ripoff. Like Wolverine and Lobo fight.
They fall behind a desk and you don't see what happens.
They struggle, they drop behind the bar, and the next thing you know, it's Wolverine standing there lighting a smoke. And I'm like, no, sorry. Yeah. I'm a Lobo guy. I'm a Wolverine guy too, but there's no way you can take Lobo.
I think it's because they had the fans vote. So, like, on who they wanted to win. And, like, sure, Wolverine's more popular. But, I mean, if you look at the stats of the characters, I'm pretty sure Lobo will come out on top.
My favorite was Aquaman and Namor.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember his name.
Aquaman can't beat him. Like, there's no way you can. Namor's ridiculous Superman-level strength. And Aquaman's like, it's cool. And, like, Namor standing there all proud, and then you see a whale falling. It's so great.
That's another character I want to see pop into Marvel. Namor the Submariner. They haven't done
Namor.
Yet, so.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, they do some cool stuff with Namor. I always hated him because he was always
an arrogant prick. That's what I liked about him.
It's like, figure it out, man. Are you a face or a heel? What are you?
Yeah. It's the same reason why I always liked Quicksilver. He was kind of an arrogant jerk, and I always thought that, like, as a good guy that's kind of a prick, sort of like the Sherlock Holmes character. Like a good guy that really does well, but like a House from the TV show. They're in their heart a good person, but they're just sort of cranky, salty jerk. And there's always something like really appealing to that sort of character. And I think it's why they endure so much in fiction and other ways.
Well, that's what my favorite villains are. My favorite villains are the ones that have some depth. You know, like I love Negan. I never watched the show, but in the comic books, Negan's my favorite villain in all of Image Comics history. He's just so developed. He's so well constructed. And like Dr. Doom is the blueprint of like how to make a bad guy work. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate they can't translate that to film yet somehow.
Hopefully.
My feeling is that like if Doom walks on the screen and you don't have the same feelings you got as a kid when you first saw Vader walk on the screen, then they've done it wrong.
Yeah.
Because Vader they did right, and Vader was literally could not have existed without Dr. Doom. Like it's as simple as that. So he's the Doom is the blueprint, and I think if you can't get the blueprint right, I don't know. It's going to be hard.
I don't know, man. I think we can do it. I want to see a purple-headed Galactus. I want to see a good Dr. Doom.
I know, right?
I want to see Mole Man. I want to see Terrax. I want to see all those cool characters.
I didn't think you were ready for it then, but we're ready for it.
We're ready for it now. Man, ever since Guardians 2, when I saw Stakar, Starhawk, and Martin X, and all those characters from the original Guardians of the Galaxy show up, and I was like, man, like everything. Adam Warlock is coming. I mean, the heavy rumor for the heavy rumor for and I really hope this is what it's going to be for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is that the villain's going to be the High Evolutionary.
Oh, how fun!
And that he'll be played by Mark Hamill probably.
Oh, how fun!
And that it'll explain Rocket's origin because it'll be connected to that, and also bring in Lisa, the female Rocket, character. Yeah. And also Drax, there's a side storyline with his daughter maybe still being alive. Like I read some spoilers online, what they're saying, but who knows? And I mean, Adam Warlock obviously was teased at the end of the second one. So.
And then you get the Skrull stuff happening in the underbelly of all that because I think they had so much fun with the Skrull stuff. I mean,
yeah, the Captain Marvel connection, and then obviously connecting them into Spider-Man was interesting. I thought that was really well done. I'm really excited. It sounds like they're really branching out into space stuff, which I'm excited to see more of.
Oh yeah, the
That's
cosmic Marvel stuff is so good. You know, like
I really think Marvel should go. I mean, I think Kang the Conqueror is the next.
Oh, that'd be so great.
Yeah, if you're setting up another like 3 movies leading to the third one being the big one, then Kang the Conqueror, because they mess with time. So
they mess with time, and that's like his alarm clock goes off when they mess with time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you can do anything with Kang. You can do some beautiful stuff with Kang.
I've been trying to read some old comics lately, and that's why I've been reading the Byrne thing. But next up on my list is Busiek's run in the Avengers.
Oh yeah,
Kurt Busiek's run with him and George Perez when they did all that. Yeah. So I have that whole run right now and collected. So I was missing like volume 2 for a long time. It's hard to find, but I finally found it. So. Dude, the finding those old things is driving me insane. Like this, I was collecting the Spider-Man Clone Saga.
Yeah.
So I got the graphic novel that has the entire original Clone Saga when they first brought in the thing. Then the Clone Saga omnibuses, I have all of them. Then they stopped those, did the Ben Reilly omnibuses, because then that's when he took over Spider-Man. And number 5 is the only one I need, and they never reprinted it. It's super rare. It goes for like $200 for like a regular paperback.
So weird.
It's the only one missing. So I either have to buy an omnibus that has a ton of stuff I don't need in it just to get that one series of 20 issues or whatever, 25 issues, or try to find it somewhere. But it drives me nuts. That's being a collector.
I know. I actually miss that. I miss being that kind of hound dog that would go from store to store looking for that thing I'm looking for. It's been a while since I've actually hunted down anything in any kind of real way. Now I'm just buying stuff that's like, oh, I had that when I was a kid, or like, oh, look at this weird old Mike Mignola cover I never had, or stuff like that. But my thing was Miracle Man. Once I got the whole run of Miracle Man.
You have all the single issues of Miracle Man?
I have every one.
That's amazing. Those are really tough to find.
And the sad thing is,
then Marvel reprinted them all.
The aggravating thing is, when they said that Marvel was going to be reprinting them and finally finishing the story,
they haven't done yet.
Mark Buckingham's drawings have already been done for 30 years, and all these rumors, and Neil Gaiman was just waiting for Mark to finish the last issue, and all these fucking rumors. And then I even said, okay, you know what? I've been on a cliffhanger, because like the way Miracle Man ends back in 1993 is a major fucking cliffhanger. Yeah. Like it's a super cliffhanger where you're like, fuck, what? And then that's it. There's none. And so all these decades go by, and the rights are in conflict, and there's all this stuff, and the whole story about Miracle Man is actually quite a tale. But when you come right down to it, Marvel finally had the rights. They said, we're going to do it, and we're going to make you buy every issue again. But before we do that, we're going to make you buy every issue of the old Miracle Man stuff from the 60s, which is like old, hard to swallow.
It was hard to read.
It's tough because it was Shazam. It's just Shazam. And from the 60s, though, so super cheese. So, but then you get through that, and you're like, okay, here we are. And then I bought every single issue of the repeated reprints of the Marvel right to the end, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I can't wait. And they fucking cut it off at the exact same spot.
So is that what happened? Because I always wondered if they just did. Was it just they never got to do it, or they canceled?
They got to issue 23, and they just said, "That's it." And I don't know what happened, because issue 24 is the one I've been waiting for since 1993. Yeah. And so it was finally coming. It's already been drawn. It's already done apparently, and we just ain't getting it. So
that's my Twin Peaks. At the end of season 2 of Twin Peaks, it left on a crazy cliffhanger, and then it took 20 years for them to finally make another series to wrap it up. But that was when I was a kid. I was watching it on like Scream Channel, and I'm like, every day I come home from school and watch Twin Peaks. And when I got to that episode, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait to see what happens. And then the next episode started over again. And I was like, oh no! And I went to school, looked it up on the internet, and saw it got canceled. I'm like, oh, there's a movie. It's a prequel. It doesn't even
prequel. I know.
Lynch.
I know. The Miracle Man is, I'll be honest with you, the Miracle Man thing is why I was so insulted that they made us go through all of that again, only to cut it off at the exact same spot. I was like, are you animals? Like, are you not even human? This is so cruel and unheard of, and the work is done. And like, why are you guys doing this? I'm not even sure what the problem is. I'm not sure if there was they even produced new material with Johnny Bates and stuff, and like they had Joe Quesada drew it, and I'm like, what is this craziness? It's so good, and even a little short Grant Morrison story, and I'm all excited, and nothing. And it's been what? It's been 8 years since they did that, or 6 years since they did that, and I'm like, what happened to it? So are we ever going to get the end of that story? To me, Alan Moore's greatest work. I think it's.
I agree. It's up there.
I mean, I do love V for Vendetta, and I do love Watchmen. I love all his stuff, but Miracle Man was just a little bit. It's the only character that I think could take Superman, because I don't think anything could beat Superman in my opinion. But like Miracle Man could, because Miracle Man is not limited by any kind of really human emotion. He actually he actually fully embraces his godlike status and realizes the good he can do in that role.
But have you ever heard of the book Super Folks? It was the novel. It was written in 1977 by Robert Mayer, and almost beat for beat, a bunch of the elements that Alan Moore used in his comics are right out of that book, and it's before Alan Moore did it. Like the idea of a Shazam character that like that turns evil, and that you have to essentially kill to stop from transforming, and all the it's like like I read it years ago. I have a copy of it. They re-released it a while ago, and Mike Allred did the art for the cover. But I highly suggest it. Look it up. There's tons of like almost beat for beat. There are things like I'm not accusing Alan Moore of ripping it off, but there are things in it that are right out of some of Alan Moore's greatest works.
Really,
Watchmen, his run on Superman, the Man of Tomorrow, the whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and a few other things. I think Swamp Thing. Maybe there's some definitely connections in that.
Wow, it's called Super Folks.
Super Folks, yeah.
I gotta look that up. I'm gonna write that down. That's something I gotta check out.
Yeah, it's Grant Morrison's like my favorite comic writer, and he talked about I think he did the forward in the book as well, and he talks about how like the deep connections there, like exactly what it is and all this other stuff. So it's pretty neat. There's also the like the Mixelplick and turning evil and all that stuff from the man. Yeah, it's because it's kind of a parody. It's kind of a parody of superheroes at the time, but it's an interesting book. Highly suggested. I'm gonna actually talking about it now makes me think I'm gonna reread it maybe over the summer because it's been a while and I really like it.
No, that sounds good, man. I'm gonna see if they made an audio book because I'm that guy now.
I have been too long drives like mowing the lawn and stuff like that. That's tedious. I
mostly listen to wrestler biographies and stuff. Like I've been loving. I just listened to two JR's books back to back, and they're great.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Jim Ross, they're really, really good, and man, it's like I'm so happy he is where he is now. We could have a whole other show about wrestling, you and I.
Well, someday. But I actually think I'm gonna have to break this into 2 interviews because it's super long. But I'm excited for it because I really enjoy talking and I had a blast. So.
Oh hey man, it was a lot of fun. It's a nice pick me up for this week. It's been kind of a rotten week, and my little boy Bear is sick, so it's been a little. It's been a bit of a hard night and a day, so this was a nice.
Well, we can always make this a regular thing. I'll definitely hang out and talk anytime you want.
Sure, dude. Anytime. We got the technology right, so.
That's right. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for talking to me, man. It's been awesome.
Thank you, and keep strong and safe, and we'll talk to you again, man.
Yeah, I hope to see you soon.
All right, buddy.
There it is, part 2, the final part of my conversation with Mike Rooth. I hope you enjoyed listening. It was a ton of fun. I could talk to Mike for hours, for days. This whole podcast could just be me talking to Mike, and that would be fun. I think I would enjoy that. However, there are other avenues to go down, other roads to travel, and I'm really glad that I got to spend this portion of it with Mike, and I look forward to seeing him again. Mike's a cool guy. I hope he does end up moving up closer this way so I get a chance to spend more time with him, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I am still on vacation, so wherever I am, I hope I'm doing well, and I hope you are doing well, and thank you once again for listening to the Graphic Histories podcast. For next week's episode, I have not quite decided on who that would be yet. I will definitely have it featured as I normally do on the Monday on social media, and you can check that out then, but I'll do some thinking over my vacation, come up with somebody, and drop it then. But thank you for listening. Enjoy your summer, and I will see you next week.